Keep in touch with the Wolf Connection podcast on our Instagram handle at the Wolf Connection Pod, or email us your questions, comments, and guest ideas to podcast@wolfconnection.org. Thank you for your support, and howls to you all. Welcome to the Wolf Connection podcast. I'm your host, John Kaufman. Our second video podcast, and this one very exciting for me because it's an individual that we've been emailing for months, actually. And now you guys have actually been able to come up to Wolf Connection. So writer-director Ashley Avis. So cool to have you up here and your team and Ed and everybody's up here. What is how was the experience for you overall for here at Wolf Connection? And because we just got out of the outside for about 2 hours, what's coming up for you as you guys visited Wolf Connection for the first time?
Feelings that I've spent a lot of time in the wild, especially for the past 4 or 5 years, and like I said to you a moment ago, the experience of getting to meet some of these wolves and to interact with them and to feel them, it was the most elemental thing that I've ever experienced, especially getting to just be in the orbit of a wolf like Willow. There was a very special connection I felt to her.
Yeah, I mean, we said this with everybody that comes up here, is that everybody has their own unique way of bringing themselves into the space, bring themselves into a habitat, or bring themselves when the wolves are out on leash. What were some of the things that were running through your head just as we're going through the property, going through these habitats, listening to the stories? I mean, you're knee deep in this stuff. You do absolutely incredible work with 4 wild horses, with not only the films that you've created, the documentary, and just everything that you've done. What's it like to work with or be inside with a predator as opposed to a prey animal?
It was a profound sense of peace, actually, because when we went into the enclosure with Willow and Leo, and immediately when we came to the property and you started giving us the tour, I saw her and you have 45 wolves, and right away I felt something. There was a connection of some kind. And so when we went into the enclosure and we sat down, and our crew, my husband and producing partner, my brother and producer, and then our cinematographer, Kai, who shot Wild Beauty, to sit there and for those 2 wolves to come up the way that they did. And as, like you said, they're predators. And she put her nose right in my face, and you're sharing something in that moment. But it was a beautiful sense of peace and a sense of trust, and also a sense of with Willow and Leo, as well as I think it was Wiley who sat next to me for a while.
Yeah.
From him, I felt something different, a sense of protection, because with our work with wild horses, obviously there are plenty of adversaries in this space, and we've gone up against a lot of them. Yeah. And entering into the space with wolves, and having spent just a little bit of time over the year that we've been developing our next feature, American Wolf, getting to know the wolf space and having more of we dove in feet first into the wild horse issue without much knowledge of the space. And with the wolves, I think we're much better prepared to understand the landscape and the foes that will inevitably come across. And we're going to be going to the rally in Daniel, Wyoming, the motorcycle rally with the gentleman that's raised a bunch of money for Wolves of the Rockies. And of course, we're not expecting to be welcome there with completely open arms. So in knowing that, I felt a sense of protection it was like Wiley understood some of those little, not fears, but awarenesses.
It's pretty crazy how that happens, right? Because we all go in and we have our expectations of what might happen, or what we're intending to project, right? And when we go inside of a habitat or any part of the den, we're like, what are we going to experience? How is this going to flow? And you guys really just were being in that moment, in those moments. And I think that's so profoundly powerful to see the way you guys interacted with them, or just let them do their own thing. And that, I think, is something that not many people can understand unless you live it or you see it, firsthand. So that's amazing that you felt those things. I mean, the reason, or a lot of the things that we want to discuss, obviously, is the fact that American Wolf is going to be a feature, which is incredible. I mean, this is a book that many of the staff here have read. I'm sure many of the folks that are watching this have read this book, and it's such a powerful story. What was this transition like for yourself at everybody who's on your team to, like I say, go from talking about horses and talking about a prey species to now diving in, like you said, feet first into this one of the most incredible stories that I think people have read, talked about, and trying to bring this cinematically to a broader audience.
The first time I read American Wolf, my heart started racing right away, because sometimes you just are lucky enough in life to have a very true gut sense of this is exactly what you're supposed to do next with your life, with your time. And it's remarkable. I feel like the journey that we've had with wild horses, it feels like has called us to wolves in a way. And I grew up with horses when I was a kid, and they fell out of my life. And when I went to college in New York and worked as a journalist, and then I started my career as a filmmaker in Los Angeles. But after doing 3 independent films, I got the opportunity in 2017 to write and direct Black Beauty, which was acquired by Disney, and tens of millions of people saw it around the world. And the messages I got from kids and families about learning about horses and the healing power of horses. But in being tasked with modernizing that story, I made Beauty a wild horse to try to do what Anna Sewell actually set out to do. What Black Beauty wasn't really a children's book. It was an animal welfare plea. She wanted to use storytelling as a platform to make change, and she did. And so that drew us to film wild horses in the wild, initially to gather authentic footage for Black Beauty. And the minute that my husband Ed and I sat on a mountain in 100-degree heat and watched what was going on with the roundups of wild horses, we thought, how is there not a blackfish for the wild horse issue? And so we spent 5 years doing that. And then in trying to reach out to different celebrities and people that have voices on behalf of horses, I ended up contacting Appy and Way. They watched the documentary, and they then pitched me American Wolf about a year ago. And I thought, oh my goodness, I read the book. I was stunned, but I wasn't shocked at some of the parallels the wolves are facing. I was furious. And it was the same sitting on top of the mountain at our first roundup, seeing wild horses, including day-old foals, get stampeded by a chopper. It was a feeling I had never felt in my body before, a sense of such anger and injustice, but also this gut sense of, if we can create something, maybe we can help be a voice to make change. And it takes everybody, all of these different organizations and sanctuaries, to actually do it. But we thought maybe we could lend our voices as filmmakers to blow this up and to make people pay attention, because so many people don't know. And then in American Wolf, learning about the story of '06, I just felt like I knew her and the spirit of her and everything that she represents. And every loss is horrible and tragic, but it feels like her story and her spirit are meant to illuminate something so much greater for wolves. And so that's why I'm just so excited to be on this path and this journey.
I mean, it sounds that way. I mean, your work speaks for itself.
Thank you.
And just looking at, again, this huge story, and we've discussed who you're heading out to Yellowstone
Tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
So you're already jet setting. You guys are already in it now, and going to meet all these incredible people. What are the challenges, I think, of, because it's interesting that a lot of the podcasts that we've been doing lately have been talking about wolf films that are coming to either independent films.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Rami Newell, we interviewed, and she's doing A Good Wolf. We talk with Will Stenberg and his brother Zach, and they're taking on the Alpha Wolf series of Rick McIntyre's. You have American Wolf. What does it say to you guys that these stories are now starting to come to the mainstream? Is there a sense that, like you said, you want to knock it out of the park? Obviously, you want to have a certain message, but what are you hoping that folks are going to get out of this after this comes down the pike and it's released in a larger audience, in a larger setting, than opposed to just the wolf community, whether it be pro or anti?
Absolutely. I think it's education is so important, and stripping away the myth of the big bad wolf and everything we've incorrectly put into our culture that has instilled an unfounded fear in these incredible beings. But I think that, and perhaps COVID helped a little bit with this, but I think we're becoming, hopefully, as a species ourselves, a little bit more aware of what we're doing to the wild, and hopefully we're being called back to the wild. And I thought about this. We were just in Washington, D.C. about 2 weeks ago, lobbying Congress. We had an event within the Capitol for the horses, and a lot happened obviously with wolves around that time, and I something kind of struck me as we were going through that event, that we find so many of us consider ourselves apart from the wild for some reason, like we're other. And we're not other. We're all part of this tapestry. And I think people are perhaps becoming more cognizant that we need to protect and restore and preserve wild places and species.
Where do you think that's been lost? Because you've covered this wild horse, you've been in with wild horses for a while, and now coming into the wolf issue, which is obviously so politically driven, so much left, right, whatever, however many sides you want to call it. There's always this divide that happens. How do you think these stories can help bring this back? And I do agree with you. I do think there's more attention to the natural world lately. And I love that you brought up Blackfish, which is another incredible documentary. And it just seems as though there's a yearning. I don't know if you feel the same way, but we see more people here at the sanctuary really wanting to connect, really wanting to be in spaces like this, really enjoying the fact that we're on these trails, we're with these wolves, we're talking about these issues. Do you find that in your travels as you continue to move through these projects, that people are yearning for this, they want this stuff, and that it's necessary to us as a species to continue to do these things?
I think our disconnect is really scary. Look at what we're doing to our brains with constantly just delving into technology, or not being out in wild places or out in the open. And even just sitting there with Willow and Leo, they didn't come up when you had your phone as the barrier. It's like a literal barrier. And of course you want to take the photos, but I think that, and I hope that people are becoming more aware of what needs protecting in our world before we lose it. And there are so many issues, of course, happening in the world today, and it's so hard for people to split their attentions. But the wild world needs us to not look away, and we need to become more cognizant of what we're doing and what we're losing so quickly. But I think that there's a restoration that you feel when you're out in the wild. I certainly feel that today. We talked a little bit about the foster youth that we introduced to wild horses a couple of weeks ago, and just watching those young people come in the morning and having gone through trauma. Of course, there was a disconnect, and kind of even their body language was withdrawn. And they you could feel the desire to open up and the excitement over meeting the horses. And by the end of that afternoon, those young people left with their spirits were exploding out of themselves. It was so cool.
I know. Oh my goodness.
And I imagine that's what you experience when people, and especially children or adults who have gone through trauma, veterans, kids that get to have the experience we just had. How can you not want to do everything in your power to go protect them? And everybody's got a unique skill set. We're using film as a medium to try to make change. And I think it's miraculous and wonderful that there are numerous wolf projects happening at the same time. They can all help. Hopefully they all kind of collide at the same time.
I know.
And then there's this rejuvenated look at protecting wolves.
Yeah, and you bring this up because you guys are heading also to Daniel too, to talk about and to be involved in that rally for Hugs for Hope and all that stuff. It does seem there. I don't know if you guys feel the same. It almost seems as though there is a tipping point that's coming, that ultimately there has to be communication. There has to be conversation. There has to be this coming together of sides to figure out the best way forward. Because if we don't figure out the best way forward together, none of these stories, I think, these stories will probably fade into the mist or fade into the ether, and it'll just be like, oh, that was another story about another wolf or another horse. How do you grapple with some of those things when you're making stories like this? Because it's always heart-wrenching for us when we see this and we talk about the wild wolves and the issues that are happening there, even with the wolves that come to us and those stories, and how do we get over that hump? What is it as a filmmaker and someone that is putting a story together? What is it? How do you try to emote the correct things, I guess, right? Because we're talking about, like, we feel a certain way personally. How are we trying to get the correct emotions, or do we not even worry about that? What are the things that you grapple with, especially now going into this
space.
This space, yeah.
I think the horses have taught us a lot, and I'm very excited to use what they gave us and the experience of being, I was a journalist for a little while in New York, and I never thought, then I transitioned to screenplays, and I never thought that'd be part of my life again. And then, Wild Beauty changed. We thought we were setting out to make an indie Planet Earth, and it turned out to be more of a journalistic expose. When I started editing the film, I was writing it for a celebrity voice narrator. And then, thanks to my brother capturing so much behind the scenes, we started realizing, oh my gosh, this is going to have to become personal, which was honestly a little scary. But it turned into what it did. And it allowed people to really follow along the journey. And so I was joking with you today, and on the ride up here with my husband, I looked over at him. We're quiet in the car, looking at the beautiful mist over the mountains, and I said, "Ed, I think we're going to do it again, because there's such a journey story to the creation of American Wolf." And I'm so excited to, in a couple of weeks, be able to say the studio that has gotten behind it. And I can't say who right now, but it's a major studio that understands. Not only are we going to create an epic, emotional, heartbreaking, beautiful, lyrically beautiful film about the life and legacy of '06, but we're creating something that is going to make a change. And that studio understands what it means and what the heart of this book, The Beating Heart, represents.
I mean, it's so incredible, I think, as well, that we're seeing major studios taking on stories like this. And I hope giving you guys the creative freedom that you're going to need to explain or dive into some of the things that are in this book, into the characters of this book. We've already discussed at length, I think, the ones you're going to meet in Yellowstone, just the real life characters, not that just the characters there. What else can you divulge to everybody who's watching this, who's listening to this, about who are there people attached initially to American Wolf? What's the track? Where are people, because I think when they hear about it, because if you search for it, it's not really there yet. So when they see this, what are they going to be able to grasp onto and say, oh my goodness, this is what is coming?
So the most exciting part of it is that Appian Way is Leonardo DiCaprio's production company. And the fact that he's involved and passionate about the issue and wanting to make change through storytelling, through film, that human being has done so much for our world. And this is going to be a big film. And it's going to create I sincerely hope, the level of tsunami that is needed to change this. How in the world we are running, how in the world people are allowed to run down a wolf like what just happened with that 9-month-old baby, how that's legal. Killing wolves with a snowmobile, that's legal in 2024? That's monstrous. That's evil. And that can't stand. And so we need change in Congress. That's animal cruelty at its tippy top. I mean, or being able to bomb pups in their dens, or aerial gunning. All of this is just, it's wrong, and it has to change. And that's hopefully going to be through the wonderful work all of these organizations are doing to fight this. And we hope that we can do our part in helping create that tsunami with American Wolf.
I think you put it beautifully there, because I think the tsunami is already gathering itself.
Yeah.
I think there's really,
definitely.
I keep going back to, there's a yearning, there is a place for these types of films now, because we were talking about The Journey of Natty Gann. We just watched Togo. So animals resonate with us. And there's a reason, I think, for that. And that's why we here at Wolf Connection, you see the powerful connection that happens. You see, like you say, the stories that change lives. And just being in the same space, just hearing a howl, just walking along the creek, doing things like that. These are connections that we're missing as humans. And again, to take such a powerful story, and one that I think resonates wholly with a good portion, I think, of the folks in America, because it's not just about a wolf. It's really about the human stories. How are you guys looking to tackle that? Because it's 06 she is the character, but all those folks around her and all those different things. How do you look to translate that? I know it's early stage and whatever you could say, but
no, we've spent a year on the pitch, so it's gotten pretty involved.
I bet. But I mean, what's that like to try and get those characters? I mean, just to tell everybody what that's like.
It's so much fun. I mean, I've gotten now to spend a little bit of time with Rick McIntyre on top of a mountain in Yellowstone. And I was joking with you earlier, but it's true. He was harder to track down than the wolves. And I've gotten to speak with Lori Lyman for a number of hours, and she's so lovely. And she gave me the most beautiful quote that is in the pitch that will be in the film, that a wolf, how did she say it exactly? A wolf doesn't, something like a wolf doesn't have time to, a wolf doesn't lay down and cry. A wolf stands up and walks into the wind. And I thought that was the most beautiful. I mean, we had a regular phone call, not a Zoom, so like she can't see me crying. But it was such a beautiful quote that really resonated as you read about the loss of 754 and what that represented to '06 and her pack. And yet she stood up and walked into the wind and went to find him and lost her life in the process. And so I very much, the approach is very much going to be a beautiful balance. I think Nate Blakesley did, obviously the book is beautiful and heartbreaking, but I love, it's kind of like the boldness of Anna Sewell, who wrote about a horse from the first person perspective when that wasn't done at that time,
right,
to make people to hopefully understand. And what Nate did in delving into her story and going into her eyes and her world of the wild, we very much are going to combine. She is the central character,
right,
and it's about the humans in her world and how they tried to fight to save her. And it's an adult narrative drama. We've been talking about it as Into the Wild meets The Scale of The Revenant. And
wow,
and being able to, Rick is such a figure in that space, and getting to spend, like I told you, a little bit of time with him and learning about his personality and his passion for protecting the wolves. It's going to be very interesting to see the wolves through his eyes and through Lori's eyes, and then be able to transition into dipping into their life in the wild.
Man, because when you say The Revenant, because that is such a dramatic overture of the wild, because that's really the backbone, I think, of that film, right? It's obviously the journey of Leonardo DiCaprio's character, but also the wild is the character, right? And just what was going on at that point in time. And it's great that is the central focus, because it's almost, I feel, in certain parts that people want to explore and know about the wild places around us, but it's that, I don't know, if they really want to dive in, fully dive in, like you said, like you guys are 2 feet in, let's just go in the deep end and we're going to figure it out, right? And I love that you guys are up for this challenge, because this is a story that, and like you said, I think we heard, what do you say, 10 years ago, this was pitched, or this was something that was in the works and it fell by the wayside. And now the fact that it's actually coming to fruition and it's in the process of happening, I can't tell you the countless people I'm sure that will watch this and be like, oh my goodness, I can't wait to see this story told in another way. And, it fills my heart, really, just to like see this story coming to fruition. What has it been like just getting involved with Nate, with Leonardo, with these, big folks, to try and make sure that this story is told right? What are those things like for you as a filmmaker to make sure that you get this right, or you do it to the degree that you can, right? Because it's never going to be perfect, but it's going to be as close as you want it to be. What's that like for you?
It's an indebtedness. I felt that with writing and directing Anna Sewell's greatest, one of the greatest equine stories of all time. And initially being tasked with modernizing it, really wanting to honor her and why she created the novel in the first place, and that call to protect horses. And so I feel the exact same way about this, like I did with Wild Beauty, to get the story right. And that requires a lot of time and a lot of research and talking to people, and even down to writing characters. We were chatting earlier about when I finally met Rick McIntyre for the first time, he was joking about how '06 reminded him of the band Heart and the song Barracuda, and that her courtship was 754 and 755. And that was just, and he started singing along Barracuda on top of the mountain in the Lamar Valley at 6 a.m. It was just such a beautiful experience to get that quirk that's not necessarily in the book, and to get to experience that with Rick in person. And that's what I'm hoping to find as well, and just getting to spend time with everybody and get to know more of their stories, and make sure that this is rooted with every ounce of authenticity that I can pour into it, and then consulting with some great people. And it's amazing, the crossover with some of the experts and now friends. It's kind of, I have this wild horse war room of people, and we, sometimes we have our Zooms that we don't talk about online, but we have our, some of our projects on behalf of the horses, but there's so much crossover with some of these people that are fighting for other species, including wolves. So I'm very, very grateful of the folks that we've got around us.
I mean, you're going to have a war room full of wolf people now.
Yeah,
because
it's very exciting.
It's very exciting. It's incredible. I mean, last two things. What are the things that, one, you're taking away from here, from Wolf Connection, just for being here for a few hours? And what are you going to take with it from here, and then implement anything that you may have seen inside of American Wolf? Is there a different perspective you gained? Anything else that you're taking away from it?
I think I'm fortunate enough to feel like the spirit of what we just experienced will carry with us and carry us into the wild, and into the beauty, as well as the adversaries that we're going to face here soon. And being able to see a wolf up close, and the word that keeps coming to mind is elemental. Their eyes are unlike anything I've ever seen. And to be able to infuse American Wolf and '06, never obviously being able to meet her in person, but the spirit of some of the wolves here, just getting to meet them, that will certainly inform some of the way that we'll approach the cinematography, and their delicacy, and they have such a strength, obviously, but the shyness and the intimacy. And I think that that's what the film really is going to represent as well. It's this epic sweeping tale, and there's the rawness of the wild, but there's also that lyricism and delicacy and the family and how bonded wolves are. And I think family and those themes really resonate with people. And getting to see that through '06's eyes, and how she builds her pack, and how extraordinary she was, and the love those wolves had for each other. And the end of American Wolf, one of the most heartbreaking scenes, which will be in the film. And I can't say who, but one of the executives that we pitch actually cried on our pitch for American Wolf. It's the first time anyone has cried in a film pitch, and which was just so representative of the power of the story. But at the very end, when '06 is killed, and that hunter is standing there, her pack strides out, and they form a semicircle around her. And one by one, they start howling, mourning her. And the fact that he stepped away, probably also afraid of those wolves perhaps, but that they mourned her. And of course they do. Why do we think as a species that we're other, or we're better, or we're singular in this universe, or that we're the only ones that have emotions or families? It's as Eric Mulvar, this amazing biologist in our Wild Beauty film, he used the term human exceptionalism. And we need to strip away our arrogance and just go out into the wild and have experiences like these today to understand what we're fighting for.
I mean, everything you said is incredible. I mean, this is I like I said, just the fact that we were able to meet, we were able to have this conversation in person, which I think is always better, is tremendous. And thank you for taking those things with you. Ed's going to take them, your brother, everybody, taking these incredible experiences away from this place that we call home, that these wolves call home. Actually, I had two more things that I forgot. Because if I don't ask this, I'm sure I'll get. What's the track for when the movie will be released? I know, obviously, very beginning stages, but what are you guys looking at in terms of release date?
So that's always a question, but it feels like this is moving for the Hollywood world of things always moving slowly. This is moving pretty quickly.
Wow.
And this year I'll be writing the screenplay. Emotionally, I wanted to start at least the first couple of pages while we're up in the area of Yellowstone. So I'm going to start writing the screenplay in the next couple of days, at least the very beginning. And then I'll be doing a lot of additional research. We've been doing research for a solid year, but just the meeting of real people and spending that time with people in person up in Wyoming and Montana. And then the plan currently is for production next year. So more than likely, hopefully the film comes out in, I would say, 2026.
Wow.
And I hope that coincides with as we're talking about the tsunami that is building, and maybe it can culminate in, or there's something else that happens. But that I think that's probably what our timeline is looking like. Yeah. And
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say the team that we've got with Appy and Way, and it's such a family affair with my family, my film family and literal family, but the producers at Appian, everyone's heart is in, this film will be amazing, but it's hopefully going to make change.
My goodness. Why do you think it's moving quicker?
It's supposed to. I feel like when things are meant to be, they flow like water, and that doesn't mean you're not colliding with some boulders occasionally, but it was the same thing with Black Beauty. From the first meeting, which wasn't even about Black Beauty, it was a general meeting. I mentioned the Black Stallion to a producer that was very kind, and he said, my partner and I have wanted to remake Black Beauty for a decade, let me know.
Really?
And I turned in a pitch in 10 days. I went home and didn't sleep and just put together this 50-page pitch. And it went so fast. And from first meeting to release of that film on Disney Plus, it was about 3 years and a week, which is extraordinarily fast.
Wow.
Because a screenplay always takes, it takes months to write, and then you're doing notes, and then you're getting notes from not only the producers first, but then the studio.
Right.
Then it usually goes back to producers again, and then so the whole process. But hopefully by the end of the year, we'll have a script everybody's really happy with. Then we'll cast, and then move into production. And what's really exciting about what Appian resonated with and what our studio resonated with, and in particular, the executive at that studio who just understands what we're doing. Part of my pitch was a combination of some of what we did on Wild Beauty. I want to go out into the wild and spend a few months spending that time. And I know wolves are so elusive, and
right.
I'm sure they're about to show us just how elusive they are when we go up to Yellowstone, but to incorporate real footage of wild wolves from the wild into the film. And that's actually what I did with Black Beauty. I intercut some of the footage of wild horses into the narrative film, and it merged so seamlessly. It felt like it was just meant. And I do believe in those things. This does feel like the horses felt like a calling, and it feels like they led us right to wolves.
Man, that is incredible. It's such a journey. I mean, you guys are, again, this is all incredible stuff. I can't wait for this. I know there are many people out here who are not going to be able to wait for this either. And it's going to be that, like, when's it coming? When's it coming? When's the trailer? When's the teaser? When's this? Because that's always what it is when things are anticipated. But it's incredible that you guys have gotten this partnership. It's incredible that you have a studio and that these things are moving forward. My last question for you, Ashley, is when you hear the word wolf, what is the thing that comes to your mind?
Spirit of the wild. Spirit of the wild. And I think I don't know if it was Rick's book or if it's an American Wolf, just the theme of they call when they need you. And I think they're calling all of us right now.
Man, listen, best of luck on everything you guys are doing going forward. You have a home here if you guys ever want to come back and just sit with some wolves and take a break if you need it from everything that's happening. Ashley Avis, so glad to meet you. So glad that you guys came up, and just best of luck and everything going forward.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time, and thank you for everything you're doing for wolves. This is extraordinary work.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Of course.
How's Teal out there? We'll be with you next time. Bye, everybody. Looking for more information about Wolf Connection or the podcast? Please visit our website at wolfconnection.org, where you can donate, sponsor a wolf, or become a volunteer.